Well, it's our last day in Ireland, and we've had quite the adventure here, Aaron, haven't we?
Yes, we have. Absolutely.
Well, welcome to the Elliott Confidential podcast. I am Chris Elliott, and I'm here with my son, Aaron Elliott.
Yes.
It is our final podcast we've been here for almost 2 months now.
In Ireland. Our last podcast in Ireland.
And today we're going to take you to the west coast of Ireland, to Limerick. And we're going to show you everything that we saw, and there's so much to see. But before we get there, I wanted to ask you our question of the week, which is, have you ever worn out your welcome when you've stayed somewhere? Tell me about that. Have you ever worn out your welcome somewhere where you felt like, okay, I've been here long enough, it's time for me to go? Kind of like we feel right now.
Yeah, we've got that way with a lot of places where it's just too much.
Do you remember the last place it happened?
I think South Africa is a good place to run out your welcome.
Oh, yeah.
You just ran out of runway.
Oh, yes. I felt the same way, too. There's a lot of other places, too, where I think in Australia, I kind of ran out my welcome after a while. At the tail end then, where we were in Melbourne, I thought, maybe it's time to leave. So Limerick, let's talk about Limerick. We just got back, and we did a lot. What did we do?
Well, that's a good question. I think that Limerick has a bunch of things going on. They have a castle.
Yes.
They have a
St. John's
rugby
Castle.
museum.
Yep.
They have a river, the River Shannon.
The River Shannon. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's take these one by one. We should start, though, by the first thing that we did there, which was we checked out the Greenway. Mm-hmm. Now, the Greenway is this rails to trail conversion. So it used to be a rail line where you can go biking.
Yeah.
And we met up with a guy named Andy Smith who owns a bike shop, and he gave us 2 e-bikes, and we went out and we checked out the trails. What do people see when they go out on these greenways?
Well, I mean, they call them a greenway for a reason. Ireland is a very green country.
Very green, yes.
And to have a really clean trail with just really not much going on except for pastures is really cool. You get to see that from your bike.
Farms, cows, that sort of thing, rolling hills. And then because it's an old railway line, you see these stations. It's like punctuated with these stations, which is kind of neat. There's old abandoned stations. Some of them are bricked up. Some of them have been converted into coffee shops, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
These greenways are, everyone is saying, the future of Ireland. They're really putting a lot of resources into the green tourism and sustainable tourism. And this is like a central part of it. They're building more greenways across Ireland. Who knew they had all those abandoned railways? I didn't. You know, the people in Limerick were very friendly. We did not meet anyone who was unfriendly to us at all. Because usually when you're a tourist in a place, you run into some people who maybe they're like, well, we don't like Americans or something like that. But in Limerick, no, everyone was very, very nice. We went to a place called King John's Castle. It is actually the #1 attraction in Limerick. And what were your impressions of that?
Well, it was a great opportunity to learn more about the history of the castle and also the history of Ireland generally.
Yeah.
I think that Irish history is, alongside English history, very important, and I think for a lot of people in the United States, it represents a part of their heritage. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely something interesting.
Yeah, it's a 13th century Norman castle. It's the easternmost, or I should say the westernmost Norman castle in existence. You don't find any more after this, because after that's the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
But very well preserved. We met the general manager of the castle, nice guy, and he showed us around. And they have, they do reenactments, and they have a very extensive collection. Actually, downstairs, the exhibits are all very fascinating, because it talks about how the Normans came into being and then basically took over. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. We then checked out a place called the International Rugby Museum. Or it's actually technically the International Rugby Experience. Very similar to something that we saw when we were in Auckland.
The All Blacks experience.
The All Blacks experience, right. The fascinating thing about this place was that it's in a new building, and it's a tribute to the Georgian architecture in Limerick, but it's also extremely sustainable. So they are like to the highest certification, ISO standards, everything like that. Yeah. Very green energy focused. But then it's about rugby, and you actually got a chance to play rugby. What was that like?
Yeah, it was very interesting because they had these little mini experiences where they'd get you to kick the rugby ball around and mini games of that sort. And they also had a lot of very good interactive exhibits that showed you a lot of interesting data about rugby.
Yeah, things that I never knew.
Yeah,
like the whole South Africa stuff. That's if you watched the movie Invictus, you would know. But they had all this about how after apartheid ended in South Africa, that rugby brought the country together, which is a really cool story.
It is, and so it's much like the All Blacks experience. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the same people were managing it, because it is such a similar experience.
It's very similar, yeah.
But I also think that you get a different experience because a lot more data actually is packed into this, whereas All Blacks is more focused on New Zealand. Sajad, who should visit Limerick?
I think anyone who's interested in history definitely will like Limerick. Between the Hunt Museum and St. John's Castle, and then there's also a very famous cathedral, St. Mary's Cathedral there. I think that you'll find a lot there. If you like traditional Irish food, it's also a good place. We found a couple of really interesting restaurants while we were there, although since we're plant-based, we really can't eat in many of them, but I'm told the food is very good. And also, if you like outdoor activities and you don't mind getting wet, you don't mind a little rain, you can go to do the Greenway. I think that's who should go. Everyone else, stay in Dublin.
Yeah. Last week we asked the question, have you ever visited a place you had sworn off and either loved it or hated it? And so we asked for your comments, and Leslie writes, I never wanted to go to Paris. I didn't like crowds or big cities. I thought the French would snub me. To my surprise, the Parisians and everyone in France was so friendly and helpful. In fact, the French will never forget what we did for them in World War II. In Normandy, American flags fly everywhere. I'm smitten with Paris and can't wait to go back. I love the food, culture, and especially the transit system. I feel safe, unlike America.
Oh, wow. I love Paris, too.
Yeah.
We were just talking about Paris today.
Paris is great. It's one of our food cities.
It is definitely a food city. What are the other food cities?
Well, there are a lot of food cities.
Yes.
There's Philly, LA, Cape Town. There's Melbourne is a food city.
Yeah, right.
You also have, of course, Paris. Was Madrid on there? Madrid, Barcelona.
Madrid, yes.
Philadelphia. Phoenix is even a food city. Seattle's a food city.
Yeah, not a food desert. Henry says, Singapore, with all the gum prohibition thing and the canings, I thought I would never go there. As it turns out, we had to go there to board a cruise. I was blown away by the airport, the architecture, the food, and the friendliness. I really enjoyed it. And you know something? Singapore is on our list. We're heading in that direction, and I really want to go to Singapore.
Christopher writes, my partner of 42 years was sent by the Bush administration on 4 trips to Romania for the purpose of teaching modern medical and nursing practices following the fall of communism. The stories were bleak. The store might have 1 chicken and 3 loaves of bread. I had no desire, but for the 25th anniversary, I located and planned with a Romanian travel agent for a 33-city road trip.
That's a long time.
Around the country across 16 days. Outstanding beer and wine, exceptional food, easy language. Okay. There were discoveries and treasures around every corner, even in towns of faded glory. I found the world's best honey in an open market in Sigtu on the Ukrainian border. Staying overnight in the mountaintop walled city Sighisoara, the birthplace of Vlad Tepes, aka Dracula, was such an amazing experience that it required a second visit last year.
Wow. Okay. You know what? I heard the same thing. I heard that it really has changed a lot, and Romania is, especially when it comes to produce. You know how we talk about Chile having the best produce? I hear Romania is pretty good too.
Yeah.
Sue says, my husband and I traveled to the UK in 2023 and we fell in love with Belfast. Another Belfast comment. Belfast has lots of history, beautiful scenery, excellent museums, including the Titanic, which you could spend hours in, and some of the friendliest people on the planet with a great sense of humor. And you know something? I could have spent all day in that Titanic exhibit. It was really cool.
I also really like Belfast. Belfast was definitely a different experience to Dublin. But I would say I prefer it to Dublin just because it's a bigger, more open city. And but we didn't get a lot of time there, so...
Yeah, you know, I like Belfast a lot. I was surprised by how much I like Belfast. I like Dublin, but I really like Belfast. And if you go to Ireland, you have to go to Dublin and Belfast. Do not overlook Belfast. Great town.
Paula writes, did not want to travel to Gothenburg, Sweden, where my husband was competing in the World Masters track and field this summer. Oh, an Olympian or, yeah.
Yes, something like that. Yes.
Something like that,
yes.
Yeah.
Professional athlete.
Professional, oh,
right.
No, that would have been terrace, sorry. We fell in love with the historic, quaint city and the surrounding towns. Great visit.
We were in Gothenburg.
Yeah.
It is very beautiful there.
Yeah, Gothenburg's fine.
Yeah.
It's not like the best. I mean,
It's very sustainable there. I wrote a story about sustainability.
They're like #1 on the GDSI.
No, Helsinki is now.
Oh.
Well, we are off to our next destination, which is...
Turkey.
Yes, Istanbul. We will be in Istanbul for the next couple of weeks. And I'm looking forward because this is our second visit to Istanbul. So I'm looking forward to rediscovering it and maybe seeing some new places. Yeah. So until then, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
See you.